computer audio.
Well, they're not join with computer audio.
If you want to switch to a different microphone speaker, no.
You do, because the microphone is in the headset.
Hello. There we go. I think I've got him. Oh. Hello, Mark. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello there.
Right. We haven't gone live yet. I'm just doing a bit of fiddling about trying to make it work.
Bit of fiddling.
A bit of fiddling, yes.
Bit of fiddling.
I've got earphones in.
Do I need earphones in?
I think if you have your... Don't open Facebook Live. You may end up with problems if you do, because there's a 20-second delay on Facebook Live. Gosh,
So shall I just close Facebook down?
Yeah, it might be as well, but I don't know how we'll know if we are live though. That's one of the problems, but I'm sure it will become apparent. Right, let's see whether or not we can. You need to be on portrait. No, landscape, weirdly, yeah, landscape for the screen sharing. That's perfect. Let's see whether or not we can go live on Facebook. Shall we go live on Facebook and just go for it?
Do you want me to put headphones in?
Well, it might be better, just in case.
See how we go?
Yeah. I'm going to have
them on hand anyway.
Excellent. Right.
How long do you want to do it for? An hour more?
Yeah, could do. I mean, just see how you feel. If you know, we can just finish when we think we should.
Okie dokie. I'm not in a rush to do anything else.
No, me neither.
At least you got some.
Right, I'm pressing the button now, so hopefully...
Oh, exciting.
Here we go. Right. Page you manage on... Nearly went on the wrong one there. Dogs today. Where's Dogs Today gone? It must just automatically be doing it as Dogs Today. Oh, I'm so good with this sort of thing. Right, I'm on that one. And then, nope, where's it gone? Dogs Today magazine, hurrah!
Hey!
Right. Right, we're preparing to live stream. Here we go.
Very exciting.
It is.
Yes, it is.
Oh, right, a few little things I have to say. Here we go. So, Marc Abraham talking to Beverley. Right. I think we're going live. Here we go. It's setting up our meeting now. I don't know whether this bit gets broadcast. If I do, I am talking to the Dogs Today Massive. Hello, everybody.
Can you see anyone commenting yet? Like, who's that weirdo in the blue top?
Not yet. Not yet. Hold on. I'm not in the right place. Well, let's just wave at people in case they're there. Right, hold on. Let me get the page up. This is tremendously high tech, isn't it? Dogs Today. If I knew what I was doing. This is my first time. Sorry. I'm just be kind and gentle to me that I've never tried to do Facebook Live before in this way. Right. Okay. I think we're there. Now, hello, everybody. Can you see us? I can see me, so I think we're there. Hello. But can you indeed see Mark? Let me just see. Oh no, it says we're going live, so it must be I have a slight delay on it. So let's see whether or not we're there yet. More. Right. Yes. It's not entirely obvious, is it? Share screen? No. Right. It still says we're going live. But we haven't actually gone live. be good to have somebody looking at Facebook at the same time to see if
I can see it. It says Ariana said I can see you, but Mark has gone.
Oh, are you there now though? Because you were then when you spoke, you were full screen. Can you speak again and see whether people can see you?
Hello, can you see me speaking? Yes, there you go.
So
is it only when I like a normal Zoom then? When I speak?
Right, so it switches between us when we're speaking.
Yes,
right.
Okay.
Okay, shall I introduce you then?
Go on then.
Right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to historic Dogs Today Facebook Live. I'm speaking to you from Chobham. Marc Abraham is speaking from Brighton.
Yeah.
And Zoom is helping us connect in these strange times. I particularly wanted to kick this series of in-depth interviews off with Marc as, well, he's a bit of a man of the moment, really. If you don't, because I know lots of people who are on the Dogs Today page are all over the world, and they may not yet know who Marc Abraham is. And I think by the end of this, you're going to be quite amazed. Marc, you began, well, like we all did, as a child.
I did.
Tell me
I
about
actually began as a child. You've done your research. You've done your research. How did you know? Who have you been speaking to?
What sort of kid were you, Marc? Were you like top of the class? Because to be a vet, you had to be pretty smart, don't you?
I started off very, very geeky and nerdy and very introvert and very shy. I know some people struggle with that image, but I was very, very conscientious of work, and I was a straight A student, and I loved work. I couldn't get enough of work, and when I finished my homework, I'd make more homework, and then I'd make even more homework, and then I'd read encyclopedias and atlases and books on nature and birds and wildlife, and I literally could not learn enough every day about nature and animals. And to be honest with you, I know I've said this story a few times, so apologies if I'm repeating myself, but so my mum, who's watching, by the way, hi Mum, tells me at 3 years old I removed a maggot from my pet tortoise's leg with a twig in the garden, and the leg got better and the tortoise got better, and I got a feeling of helping animals get better, and that apparently was the trigger of all I wanted to do from then on, was to make animals better. So I only wanted to be a vet, which I know annoys a lot of people, because a lot of people don't really know or ever know what they want to be. But I knew from 3, and that's the only thing I ever wanted to do, nothing else. So it was all about working hard to get there, and which was study, and do everything possible to become a vet.
What was home like? Did you have any siblings? And what did you have anyone in the family who was medical? Or
yes, so I had. Obviously, I was very lucky to be brought up by amazing parents, and I'm not just saying that because Mum's watching, but I had an uncle who was a vet, so I knew of the profession, if you like. The two sides didn't really get on with the family. My sister was the cool kid. My sister was the streetwise, invited to parties, did a load of cool stuff, was popular, wasn't straight A's, so she was the opposite of me. So and she became an accountant. But I had a very safe upbringing. Northwest London, right on the edge of suburbia, near fields and countryside. So I was always encouraged to get out and to have nature walks. And I remember my dad used to whenever I had a birthday party, used to do these nature maps, and with all my mates, and we used to go around the woods and look for bird eggshells and feathers, and I was always encouraged to play outside. So I was never really a computer game person. I was just outside as much as and being an introvert, I used to disappear off for hours and play with, frog spawn and anything I could find. And then because I draw as well. Your
father was an artist.
He was in advertising.
Profession, or
he's in advertising. Then he retired, and he was an artist at heart. He was very creative, very into branding and logos and fonts, which we'll obviously touch on later, but because it did influence me. But I was named after Marc Chagall, the French painter. Wow. And I draw. So I used to bring all this nature home and then just draw everything and label everything and look everything up. So it was just a 24/7 rolling information machine. I literally couldn't learn enough.
Oh, and did you have any pets when you were growing up?
Yeah, I had a tortoise, obviously, called Speedy, as they were all called in those days, and it had the phone number on the shell, you know, because it used to escape and go to different gardens. And I used to always had cats. My parents loved cats. Susie was the first one. Then we had one called Rabbit, bizarrely. But we always had cats. Never ever had a dog, weirdly. Always loved all animals, but never had a dog. No. So yeah, I've always been surrounded by animals and nature, and it was nice to be in a position to actually do something where I could end up helping animals.
Yes. So when you went off to study to be a vet, did you leave home or did you do it from home?
Yeah, I got into Edinburgh University. I think I got in a year early because I was such a square. And I went to Edinburgh and had 5 years up there, and that's where I kind of what they call it, the wheels fell off. And I learned actually how to interact with other human beings and start drinking alcohol and start going to parties and just those things that people normally get exposed to in their teens. I was sort of late teens and sort of, I'd done all the geeky, nerdy stuff, and now it's time to sort of experiment with the rest of the world. Because I got there, and that was always my mission, to get to vet school and then see what happened.
And were there any, well, when you were there, was there any specialisms that appealed to you, or was it always, you know, because I suppose you have to do rotations where you end up doing farm animals as well, or what did you like and what didn't you like?
When I went to uni, in my interview, I always wanted to be a tropical vet that worked in the tropics to maybe cure a disease or you know, that sort of stuff, which was weird. Yeah. Then I got into uni, and you sort of pass through different phases, because as you say, you touch on so many different parts of being a vet. So 1 week, well, the first few years was anatomy and physiology and biochemistry. It's very much like medical. And then you work 1 week in an abattoir. Then you work 1 week on the racing stables, and 1 week, and of course it's one of the only degrees where every holiday has to be filled with doing experience. So by the end of it, you've worked in abattoirs and racing stables and zoos, and you've done everything because you have to. And it was interesting because growing up in London, I had no idea about horses really, and definitely no idea about farm animals. And of course, a lot of vet students are from farming backgrounds.
Yes.
So I remember when we did cows the first time and we had to do rectal examinations to check if they're pregnant, I had no idea what I was doing. Same with horses, and the vocabularies that are used are so different, and the way you act around those animals, and the whole reason for keeping those animals and farming those animals was so alien. And so, but yeah, you have to do everything. Everything's obviously, when you're a vet, you have to pass every exam.
Yes.
And then you kind of specialize after that. And I loved surgery, I loved operating, and I loved fixing stuff quickly. So for me, it was about being a small animal sort of GP vet. I loved the basics of operating, sort of neutering and dentals. And then of course, I ended up specializing into emergency and trauma medicine surgery, and ran my own emergency clinic in Brighton, but that was a few years later.
So as a vet, because I now know are you vegan? Were there any, were you back then? Were you?
No, not at all. Not at all. I was a huge meat eater. Was until about 4 years ago. Then a few things happened, and I was campaigning so hard and trying to save animals, but then eating them as well when I got home, and it just didn't feel right.
No.
So I guess I got there at my own speed, and kind of feel guilty now that it didn't happen earlier. So I'm plant-based now, I guess they call it. I don't think I'm 100% vegan, because I'm still advising cat owners to feed their cats meat. So I don't think I could ever call myself, you know, totally meat free in terms of, but I don't eat meat anymore. I don't eat dairy. So I've cut all that out, and I feel better for it, not just physically, but also conscience wise and mentally, because I remember being surrounded by people at Westminster, like Peter Egan, obviously, who's vegan, who also went vegan fairly late, Shakira. And it was like, well, if they can do it, then surely I can do it. And it was like, yeah. And then I tried it, and I think the fish took a bit longer to to eliminate out the diet. And now I haven't eaten meat for, I think, 4 years, 3.5 years. So you just get used to it, really. But I love it because I can go to bed at night knowing that I'm not complicit in any animal suffering. And that to me is important. I'm just gutted that it took me that long to kind of realise and for the penny to drop. But hey.
So when you were a student, were you in any way a radical student? Did you go on marches? I'm just wondering, where did this campaigning zeal start?
When I was a student, I wasn't a particularly good student. I was a naughty student because I was now doing my teenage years, if you like, at uni. So I was rebelling and I was hanging out with a bad crowd,
Having fun.
sitting at the back and drawing stupid things on each other's work and having fun. So I wasn't particularly brilliant in terms of academically, like I was at school. But I was learning how to kind of be a human being in a city like Edinburgh. Very lucky to spend 5 years there. But yeah, I wasn't really a campaigner at all. I was more of I set up the ski and snowboard club for the vet school. I played rugby badly. I was kind of.
I remember the ski thing because I remember when I first heard of you. I mean, this was a long, long time ago. I was told that you were a bit of a character, that you were the vet that did snowboarding and was a DJ. And I think your email back then was Mark the Funky Vet.
Still is. And interestingly, with what's happened in terms of a 10-year campaign that involves MPs and prime ministers and all the rest of it, that email address never changed. So to change the law with Mark the Funky Vet email is so funny and embarrassing at the same time, obviously. But the reason that happened, so at uni was uni. It was crazy. It was 5 years, and then I came out and I started working in Watford as a mixed practice vet. So I was doing farms and horses, but terribly, doing more of the small animal stuff well. And then I went on a snowboarding holiday, and I remember it was at Avoriaz, and I remember being on a chairlift, and the snow wasn't that good. And I thought to myself, how can you be assured that you're going to get decent snow when you go snowboarding? So I just thought, I've got to move to France. So I ended up doing 3 snowboarding seasons in Val d'Isère in the French Alps as a barman. And I only became a barman because I started off the most incredible, quite a groundbreaking bar called Café Fas, which was back in the day, quite a unique concept for many reasons. And I started hanging up coats and cleaning the toilet. And every time people came in with their coat, I remembered them because obviously people go for usually a week at a time. And I remembered them from the night before, remembered where they were from, and I started to speak in all their different languages. And the boss said, I want you behind the bar for après-ski. And I was like, I've never worked in a bar. He goes, perfect, I can teach you how I do it my way. So I learned how to be a barman and started to DJ, and I ended up doing 6 months in France every winter for 3 years. And then I used to come back and vet all summer and sort of make money to go away again. And I started DJing in the UK, and I set up a club night in London, and I moved the club night down to Brighton, and I used to do, 5 or 6 nights on as an emergency vet. And then the 7th night was running my club night in one of the big clubs in Brighton and inviting DJs down. So it was a very strange existence. And I remember, I think BBC South did an item on this sort of weird DJing vet, and they came to the club and they filmed at the practice. It's like, at the time it seemed normal, but looking back it was mental.
And did you get scouted to be a model, or
I
2 stories?
Now I have sent you some notes to ask me, but that wasn't one of the questions.
I'm very naughty.
I just want to tell viewers I didn't tee that one up. I actually got spotted on a bus in Val d'Isère, and weirdly, and asked if I would model some urban wear, which the pictures are still out there. And I did, and we did the shoot in Chamonix, which was fantastic. And I was a model for a few days. Very odd. But I was a lot thinner and had a bit more hair.
But you've lived is basically what we're getting to here. That you most people, it's the dream to be a vet, and you got to be a vet, and then you did loads of other things that people would dream of. But on your very helpful notes, it says that you then became a volunteer and went overseas. But I suspect you went to some exciting places to use your vet stuff. Where did you end up? And what did you do?
That's one of the best things about being a vet is that you can do it abroad and you can do it for different charities. One of the most interesting, I guess, missions I went on was after the tsunami happened in 2004 in Thailand. I remember coming off my night shift and seeing it all on the news and thinking everything's about the humans, fine, but no one's really mentioning if there's any animals involved. And I knew that there was charities out there that look after street dogs.
Yeah.
So I just kind of said to my fellow partners, can you hold the fort because I'm off? And they were like, what do you mean? I said, I need to go there. So I flew to Thailand the next day and landed in Phuket. And I remember landing and seeing all the houses and all the bodies in the water. And then we went down to Phi Phi and we went down to Koh Lak, and we were working for about 6 weeks in the end with Soy Dog Foundation. And we were rescuing dogs and rescuing cats, and we were operating in the Buddhist temples because those were the only buildings that were still standing because they were marble. And you'd have the monks coming out with banana leaves with sticky rice. Well, and we'd had people holding the torches. We'd be dripping animals. We had to blow dart them first because we couldn't get near them. And it was a phenomenal few weeks of being surrounded by so much devastation and death and destruction. I mean, I remember operating once. I was operating on a dog, and I looked up, and there was just a child being buried like 20 meters away, like and they had to bury them in shallow graves in case they needed to dig them up again for identification. So, and a temple with 1,800 bodies sort of all stacked up. So there was some horrible sights, but weirdly, it didn't affect me until I got back here because it was normal. I came back here and walking on Brighton Beach and expecting to see destroyed buildings and bodies in the water, which obviously didn't happen. So, and then I went back, I raised money. Funny enough, at the Wagon Bone show, which you were responsible for, I think, weren't you?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I had a stall, which was the Soy Dog Foundation. I was raising money. I think I was selling like wristbands that were really popular at the time. You know, those little rubber wristbands.
Yeah.
Made £1,000 and then went back to Thailand and gave the check to the charity a year later. So, I mean, that's years ago, isn't it?
It was.
So,
I think we ran some articles about that, but
yeah,
I think
you did.
The very first article we did was on your snowboarding and DJ stuff, and then we've been following your career for some time.
Yeah, following yours. So it's been, and then other places I've been to. I mean, India is, I think, my favourite country. I've been there twice. I've worked in the slums of Mumbai with a fantastic charity called Stray Dogs India. I've worked for Animal Aid Unlimited in Udaipur. That was just last year. Been to the Ukraine to rescue a bear. Neutered in the Peruvian Amazon. Worked with Animals Asia in Chengdu. Removed a tooth from a moon bear and took a blood sample. So it's funny because I know this sounds completely crazy, but when you're being a vet somewhere else and you open up an abdomen, for example, of a dog, and it's like, I know this sounds mad, but it's like it's always the same. You know, wherever you go in the world, you can do your job. You can neuter and you can remove tumors. I remember in India last year, I removed this tumor from a dog, and it's just an amazing feeling because no one else wanted to do it or had the skills to do it. But it's amazing what you can do with very, very little resources anywhere in the world to help animals. And I think it's to go on an international mission is just fantastic. Whether you're going on a disaster relief or you're going on a planned mission, it's one of the best feelings to because animals mean so much to people. Of course they do here, but they mean different things to different communities around the world. And one of the things in Thailand after the tsunami was that there was one little fishing village just north of Khao Lak called Barnam Kem, and it was like, I think 40 people had survived out of 400 or something. It was crazy. And then there's one dog waiting on a flat slab of stone, which was the dog's house, and waiting for the owner to come back. And by looking after the dogs, it formed a focus for the people to get together. So there was lots of different levels of how amazing animals were to change lives and to help people through that process. Yeah.
So at what point, because you've obviously spread yourself fairly thin there, gone around the world solving terrible problems. When in Britain did you sort of have the moment where you went, there's something broken here, how am I going to fix it?
So I was running this emergency clinic in Brighton, which means that you're working sort of 5-6 nights a week. I mean, it's tough because I was doing obviously loads of stuff in the daytime, which, you know, it's my own fault. So I'd come on a shift at 6 p.m. and I'd finish at 8 a.m. And the way the emergency clinic, so back in the day, emergency clinics had just started. So Vets Now, all that sort of movement had only just started. We all started at the same time, and I was on the board of emergency veterinary practitioners and stuff. So I set up my own one, and we called it the Priory Emergency Treatment Service, which still does very well today. And we basically looked after the emergencies for the surrounding maybe 13 or 14 practices. So from 6 o'clock, we had the hospitalised patients that were already in the hospital, and we had people coming in with emergencies. Now, my favourite emergencies were always cesareans and gastric torsions, because the more thing about emergencies, the more you do, the better you are at A, spotting them, B, fixing them. And a lot of these emergencies usually only happen at night, especially gastric torsions. So we'd see one a month, and we had this formula where we had a huge success rate. It was fantastic. But one night we had 8 puppies coming in, all with different owners, suffering with the disease parvovirus, which most of your supporters, fans will be aware of. Horrific, probably the worst infection a puppy can get, especially when they're young. And it tears them to pieces. There's vomiting, there's diarrhea. Apologies if you're having your dinner. But it's usually a really horrible smell. You can diagnose it just by them walking in the room. You know, someone brings a puppy in, you've got it, it's parvo. It's a very distinct smell. It just rots their insides. Hard to treat. Everyone has to wear isolation gear. IV, quite hard to get IV access. Antiemetics, anti-vomiting, that means. And lots of drugs, very expensive for new owners. They just shelled out on a puppy. Now it's going to cost another £2,000-3,000. It's probably going to die. So a horrible disease. Now we had 8 of these puppies coming in, which is incredibly rare. A normal practice will get 1 case of parvo a month, maybe even less, because most dogs are vaccinated, and this is a preventable disease. So these 8 puppies, we ended up losing 2. We saved 6, and then I thought, this isn't right, because these people are just trying to do the right thing. They've gone to get a puppy, and they've died, or they've survived, but these puppies have gone through hell. So I kind of waited a few days, and I rang all the owners individually and found out where the puppies were from, because they all looked fairly similar. And they were all from the same batch, which were being sold by a third-party legal licensed dealer just outside Brighton. Now, I was doing TV at the time, and I didn't know where I was going in terms of who was going to be there. So I kind of went incognito and put glasses on instead of my contact lenses and a hat. And because, a lot of people who sell these puppies in this way aren't the nicest of people, let's say. So I went along on my own, and I parked on the other side of the fence in case I needed to drive away quickly. And I kind of pretended to be an owner looking for a dog. And I saw the puppies running around on straw, and some were lethargic, some weren't. No mums, obviously, anywhere. And I was very surprised at the sales patter and the pressure that they were putting me on to try and buy, obviously. And I said, I'll think about it. And then it got a bit nasty. So then I could see them sort of moving around to block my path to the car, because they wanted me to buy a puppy. And I kind of made my excuses and left and drove away. And I just thought, these guys are very good. It's almost impossible not to buy a puppy if you're going there to look for a genuine puppy. So I did some research and found out it was legal. They had a license, pet shop license, and I thought, this is wrong. And then I got the other owners to come back in with their vaccination paperwork and stuff, and some of them had stamps from Welsh vets in Pembrokeshire and Carmarthenshire. And I was like, okay, so what's going on here? Did more research, found out that they were coming from Wales. They were coming from Welsh puppy farms, which, again, I looked up, were completely legal. So we have this weird chain of legal puppy farm, legal seller, and people at the end of it with these poor dogs that are just suffering. So I decided to kind of do something about it. But I had no idea about politics, law, or history. Nothing at all. Didn't even know about campaigning. Didn't even know what Westminster was for. The only thing really I knew about MPs or prime ministers was Spitting Image, which back in the day were puppets. Satirical puppet show. That's all I knew about MPs. And so that wasn't a route that was even I knew anymore at all. So I used my media platform. I was doing Paul O'Grady show at the time, BBC Breakfast, and Alan Titchmarsh, and a few other shows. So I was reaching out, and I just thought at the time, because I was involved with so many different charities, I was often invited to do fun dog shows. And just to judge Waggy's Tail and Child's Best Friend and Scruff's Heats, you know, around the country. I loved it because you're a TV vet and you can meet people and meet dogs, and yay. So I came up with the concept of a fun dog show, but judged by celebrities to raise awareness of issues. And, you know, obviously started in Brighton, and we called it PupAid, and PupAid after LiveAid. And we had celebrities in Brighton, and Patsy Palmer was one of the first, you know, Bianca from EastEnders and Rizzle. And we had music as well, because I wanted to keep the LiveAid theme, which was to have music as well as the dog show. So we had Rizzle Kicks played one year just before they went massive, and we had various celebrities came along. And all of a sudden, this was became a thing. It became a thing. So we had a couple of years down in Brighton, and then the most important thing, we had music, we had the dog show, and then we had the parade of ex-breeding dogs. So it's kind of a trap, really. It was like making people feel happy to be at a dog show, getting them involved and having food and having live music, and then hit them with the facts, the hard evidence, which were these poor, broken, if you like, breeding dogs that have been rescued from puppy farms with their mammary glands dragging on the grass, and you know, eyes removed and teeth removed, and just horrific. Yes. But and from going from a fun dog show to the reality check in a split second, you could see there was silence, there was people crying, and it was like, in terms of awareness about puppy farming, that's kind of how I did it. It was kind of a shock effect. But also, between each round, we'd have announcements about the best way to get a dog, which is, if you want a puppy, obviously go to rescue. But if you want a puppy and there aren't any, or you want a specific puppy, always see it interacting with its mum in the place it was born, or obviously go to a rescue shelter. So that was kind of the message. And then we moved it to London, and we moved it to Primrose Hill, where it lived for 7 years, PupAid, every September, the first Saturday. And Ricky Gervais came, and Brian May came, and Peter Egan, and Rachel Riley, and Sue Perkins, and Love Island, and Made in Chelsea, and Towie. And my dream was really to reach every demographic. So highbrow to tabloids to everybody, and get this message out and cause a change using a change in behavior. And we had, obviously, the more celebrities, the more titles are attracted, the more tabloid titles, and you can reach a lot of people. But of course, this is just happening one day of the year. So for me, it wasn't enough, and I was like, what else can I do to change the situation, apart from influencing people's behavior when they're choosing a dog?
Can I back you up a little here? Because you just dropped it into the conversation. Oh, I became a TV vet. Now, you've already admitted you were introverted and shy. So
I was.
What made you put yourself through this? Because the first time you went live on television must have been nerve-wracking.
Not even the first time. The first 100 times. Always nerve-wracking. Still is. I've never, ever wanted to do it. But the feeling of being in a position to educate people to look after their pets better always got me through it. And I got into it completely by accident. There was a vet that came to my practice when I was doing the emergency work, and she said, oh, by the way, did you know Paul O'Grady show? They're looking for a new vet because they were changing channel, going to Channel 4. And I was like, okay. And at the time, I was writing articles for the local paper, which was the Argus in Brighton. I was writing a column. I didn't get paid for it, but I wrote for 3 years, every single week for the weekend Argus about pets or animals. So I loved educating. I always loved educating, school visits, etc. So I thought, well, let's give it a go. So I went up to Covent Garden. We had the casting, and I took my scrapbooks with me, because I put all my newspaper articles in scrapbooks, same as in the olden days. Geeky, nerdy. Look, I've done scrapbooks, and and they said, great. You know, you're obviously quite passionate about educating people. So I remember the first Paul O'Grady show I did was, I think Bonnie Langford was on. Terrifying, because it was live. It was in front of about 5 million people. It was a studio audience. There's animals involved. There's members of the public involved. I had a pet clinic, so I used to take the owners and the celebrities round the pet clinic, explain the problems, and then use that to educate people on how to use their look after their pets better. But one of my biggest passions has always been stand-up comedy. So I was working with someone like Paul, who was a hero. Oh. And I was able to tee him up some lines, and he'd always give me a line to comedy-wise, nothing to do with the animals. And we had this fantastic chemistry and banter on set of yes, we'll get all the information out, but we're going to have a lot of fun at the same time. And I remember them saying, you know, and this is not blowing my trumpet, this was a dream to me, because they were saying, you are the only regular person that we have on that can get the audience laughs. And it was like, as someone who's done a stand-up comedy course, but only did it really to perform better on live TV, it was brilliant, because we were working together to having fun, but also to get the information out. But it was always nerve-wracking, and it still is.
But what a lovely man, though, for you to have your first experience on television. Years and years ago, I think one of the early ones I was on was The Big Breakfast, when Paul, this is how old I am, Paul was in his alter ego, I forgot what his alter ego was, but in full drag.
Lily Savage.
Yes, Lily. And I'm from Liverpool, and he's from Liverpool.
Wow.
And we were always the dog bit on Big Breakfast, and he loved the dog bit more than anything. And it was quite nearly the beginning of him becoming a TV personality, and such a lovely man. So yes, so you got over the nerves by...
No, kind of. You get over it in a couple of minutes, because you're in the moment. But even now, you know, when I do things like this morning, it's not terrifying. You're nervous because you care so much about what you're saying, and I think that's, for me, that's what makes me nervous. It's the fear of leaving that situation without doing the best job and without giving all the information out, because that, for me, you don't get these opportunities very often. I mean, you've done this morning as well. You know what it's like. You get 3 minutes, 4 minutes.
Yeah.
You've got questions. Sometimes you're on with other people. And it's the worst feeling in the world to leave a set.
Yeah, to get
and not
get the message in, because
exactly.
they want to have a nice, jolly program. But
right,
you're
there for a reason. You're there for a reason, and you want to get information out. And if you don't, it's the worst feeling in the world, because you've kind of missed that opportunity. So that's where the nerves and anxiety comes in. It's fear of not doing good enough and getting enough information out and making that difference in that moment.
But I've followed your career, Mark, and at the beginning, I could see when you were nervous, because I
used to do that a lot. You
have definitely come out of your shell. You've now you look much more relaxed on camera and much more just happy, because that's the thing is I think that the more you are now in your environment, this is, you know what you're talking about. You're absolutely the go-to expert. So it's. Yeah, I mean, it's lovely to see that, because it's as if there's a little light gone on that's gone, I'm actually quite proud that we're getting somewhere. It's rewarding to see the growth, because when you were doing Pup-Aid, did you know that this would lead to 10 Downing Street? I mean,
no,
how on earth did you go from celebrity to... Because you were taking a day off a week to go and...
I had a day off a week anyway. And I was, and to be honest with you, I had no idea, obviously, about politics. Just to backtrack what you just said about sort of getting better at telly, I think during those years of campaigning, I was usually on asking for something, you know, because I was mid-campaign. And I think now we've got the result that we've got. I mean, there's still lots of work to do, obviously, but now that we've got the result we've got, it's almost like I'm not there to ask any favors anymore. I'm actually there to be me and to sort of talk about what we've achieved. So it's a very, very different psychology. With regard to going to Westminster, Caroline Lucas MP was one of the first sort of well-known personalities to attend the dog show in Brighton. And she called on me to come round and talk to her family about what dog to get. And I advised them about rescue dog, and they got a rescue Black Labrador. And she said, how can I help with your campaign? And I said, well, I'd love to talk to you if you think it's worthy of political sort of stuff. So she said, come to my office in Westminster, we'll talk about it. So the first meeting I ever had, actually, no, this was the second one. Before that, I'd gone up because at the time I'd been invited to judge the Westminster Dog of the Year show,
right,
which is still going. It's a yearly thing.
Yeah. And
it's MPs with their dogs. And I remember the winner, when I was asked to judge it or help judge it, was Neil Parish, who's still an MP. He's a Tory MP for Honiton and Devon. And his yellow lab Wilberforce won it.
Oh,
and I remember swapping cards with him, saying, do you think I could come and chat to you at some point? And he's like, yeah, yeah. It's so funny. And he's a good friend, so I can make fun of him. Anyway, so he invited me, and this is how, not in political terms, but how green I was as a campaigner. The first meeting I ever had in Westminster, I took with me my grandma and my mum, my grandma's friend.
Yes.
And yeah, it was almost like we'd won a competition on a cereal packet to meet an MP. And I did a PowerPoint presentation to Neil, and he's like, yeah, very interesting, and I didn't know what I was doing. And then we had drinks on the terrace afterwards, and obviously my grandma and mum and my grandma's friend, who sadly passed away since, that was so like I was like, what are we doing here?
It's inspirational, isn't it? It's when you walk into those halls, it just, the history, you just feel so lucky to be inside there. I felt the same thing. I mean, it's just, wow.
It still blows my mind now that to be involved with that building. The second time I went to meet Caroline Lucas, she was fantastic. Her office was in a slightly different bit behind Portcullis House, and she basically said, you need to do an e-petition to get on the political radar, and I didn't really know what that meant. Back then, they'd only really just started them, and you had a year to get 100,000. And I was like, do you know what? I've got media contacts. You know, I've made friends with Ricky Gervais. Surely we could get this 100,000 like in a few minutes. You know, you had millions of followers. How wrong I was. As you know, as everyone who's ever tried knows, to get 100,000 signatures is one of the hardest things. It's one of the hardest things psychologically as well. I mean, you'll know, Dr. Dan knows, our good friend, you know, Finn's Law, all these campaigns that have done it. It's not easy at all. You have to be relentless on Twitter and Facebook, and you feel like you're boring everybody, but it's achievable. And then even at the end, yes, you get a debate, but it doesn't necessarily mean you change anything. And that can be very disheartening, and certainly our first one was. Anyway, but you're right, when you go into Westminster, I always say it's the scene in Gladiator when the slaves go into the Colosseum for the first time, and they're looking up going, what is this place? And I still get a bit of that when I go there now. I've never really felt like I've belonged there. I've always felt as a bit of an imposter, which I guess as a campaigner is pretty normal. But back in the early days, I still love going there. Every Tuesday I'd go there to my day off work, and I'd have of course by then we'd formed this coalition with people like Linda and Sue from Cariad, and Julia Carr from Canine Action UK, and Philippa Robinson, who's sadly passed away. And we'd have these, I was fronting it, but they were supplying me with the sort of reports and the evidence, and I was going in and meeting MPs. And this went on, and then we did the e-petition and ended up getting the 100,000 after 6 months, one of the hardest things I've ever done, possibly the hardest thing I've ever done. And then, of course, you've got this bit of campaigning gold, which is a debate in Westminster. Now, I don't know what I'm doing. I've just literally got 100,000. I don't know what I'm doing next. So we teamed up with a fantastic public affairs company called Bellenden, who are now called Newington. And they said, we'll work with you pro bono. We love dogs. Oh. So they were kind of guiding us and mentoring us and setting us homework in terms of, you need to do a briefing. You need to do a drop-in for MPs. I don't know what that even means. So slowly but surely we learned. At one point, when we got the 100,000, I moved to Surbiton, to my best friend Russell's apartment. He'd moved in with his girlfriend, and I literally lived the life of an MP. So I'd go up there on Monday, I'd stay there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, and I'd come back to Brighton. I took a sabbatical from being a vet just to campaign to get for the first petition. So I needed MPs. I made a pact with Rob Flello, who was the Labour MP at the time for Stoke South, that we'd have the petition debate in the main chamber of the House of Commons, but you needed a certain amount because normally it's Westminster Hall.
Yes.
So I made a pact with him, and we were like, yeah, but we're only going to have the chamber. So it was my mission was to meet as many and lobby as many MPs as possible. So I used to do this thing where, as you know, in the atrium of Portcullis House, which is the weird sort of looking building opposite Big Ben and the main palace of Westminster, in the atrium, you're only allowed to be in the atrium if you're an MP or a member of the MP staff, which is annoying because you have this little thing on, and it's obvious that you're not meant to, you have to be there with someone. Yeah. Anyway, so what I did was I arranged all my meetings back to back throughout the day, so I wouldn't have to leave the atrium. I'd have one table as my kind of office, and the MPs would come to me. So that was the way I got around that. and with that, I started to meet all the security staff and all the police. And after a while, they were like, "Yeah, it's you again." And to the point where if I was there on my own, I'd put a notebook open on another chair, as if to say they've gone to the toilet or they're coming back in a sec. And they all knew they were. It was just maybe a few minutes between MPs. But it was a case of otherwise you have to go through security every single time and come back. I got about 90 MPs on board in 2 months. And a normal backbench business debate is about 12 max. So I got 90 just by lobbying intensely in those few weeks. And then I remember I was on. So this is again. I know we want to talk about creativity. So if you're watching, at the time there was a program called, I think it was This Week, wasn't it, with Andrew Neil? Wasn't it?
Yes.
It was after Question Time.
Hmm.
And he sometimes brought on his golden retriever called Molly the dog. # Molly the dog, used to say.
Yes.
So one night I was thinking, how do I get this debate in the main chamber of the House of Commons that is usually in Westminster Hall? So I emailed Molly the dog. And I still remember going, "Dear Molly, there's something your owner Andrew needs to know. Puppy farming, third-party dealing. You know, the government at the time were advising to always see the puppy with the mum, but they were giving licenses to dealers to sell without the mum. So this is right." Anyway, I got a call the next day saying, "We'd love to meet you, and can you come up to Millbank?" And I met the team. They said, "We want to use puppy farm footage. We want to meet. We want to do a little short VT video of you holding some responsibly bred pups, which we filmed in a vet practice in North London. And would you come in to Daily Politics Live on BBC Two after Prime Minister's Questions on Wednesday and talk about it?" So I'm like, I'm a vet. I don't know anything about politics, but now I'm going to be on this show, not even on any day. It's on after Prime Minister's Questions, which is like the most watched by journalists and politicians. So I did it, and we were pushed for time because there was some questions on Iraq or something. And they said, "So, you know, push for time, what was the message you want to tell the government?" And I remember looking straight down the lens, saying the government are complete hypocrites. They're telling people to always see the puppy with his mum, but they're licensing dealers, if you like, to sell the puppy without the mum. So how can that be right? We're meant to be a nation of animal lovers. This is disgraceful. And it was that sort of short and sweet. It's online. It's so embarrassing. And with that, I remember getting the train back to Brighton. I remember getting a direct message on Twitter from the Backbench Business Committee saying, "You need to come back to Westminster. You're causing too much trouble. What you said on Politics Live." So I literally got off and went back. And I had this emergency meeting with the chair of the Backbench Business Committee. And they said, "Look, you can't say things like that on a political programme." And I was like, "I don't know what I'm doing." You know, I'm like, "Help." Anyway, she said, "How many MPs have you got on board with your campaign?" And I said, "About 90. And she said, "Are you sure?" And I had the list on me. And she said, that's a debate. She said, "That's a 3-hour debate in the main chamber of the House of Commons." And I was like, "Thank you." And she picked up the phone and she booked it in. And it was the 4th of September, 2014. So that was, this was before the summer. So we had the summer to prepare. I remember feeling, because every time I was walking into Westminster from Waterloo, when I used to come in from Surbiton, which is a journey, you know, of course, coming in from Southwest, I used to walk along Westminster Bridge and see the palace and see the terraces and see Big Ben and see Portcullis House. And I used to think, as someone who didn't know what they were doing, how do you even get anything through that incredible place, you know, with no experience? And suddenly, I think that was the first time that our little coalition of, you know, Linda and Sue and Julia, had actually made a progress up the ladder. You know, we'd achieved something. We'd got the debate. We'd had the 100,000 collected, and now we had the debate in the main chamber of the House of Commons, which is very rare for a backbench business debate. So that was the first thing. And then, of course, we had the debate. All the MPs turned up, and they all voted for a ban. At the time, it was called the debate was a ban on puppies and kittens sold without their mum, and the hashtag was "Where's Mum?" And it was encouraging people to always ask for the mum. And of course, we had every MP cross-party all voting for a ban on third-party sellers, technically, and the government rejected it. And they rejected it because we later found out the pet industry were lobbying, and there was all these leaked emails. And that was the first time the absolute disappointment of we've done everything possible to get this through, and yet it's still not good enough because of the opposition, the opposition, not the opposition politics wise, the opposition to the campaign from money, if you like, and power.
I remember that debate. I remember a lot of politicians standing up, and I remember quite a number of them saying your name. And I remember thinking, wow, you know, this is amazing. They all know Mark, and normally it's really stuffy debates, you know, but I was absolutely gripped by it, and that there were the MPs were so passionate and well informed, and
they all mentioned their pets' names. Do you remember, to get them in Hansard?
They started to be seen human, and I remember starting to. I started to sort of pay attention a bit more, because being in the dog world for as long as I had, I'd become quite cynical. I just thought no one's ever going to sort this mess out. And I must admit, I was quite, you know, I didn't really believe it was possible. But I started seeing glimmers of hope in you and your group. And I remember thinking, you know, you might be onto something here. I mean, it was still early, and I'd seen all because politics used to be much more closed door. It used to be lots of committees of the great and good, where charities and business would talk about what was best for us. But you were removed from the people, using democracy to get heard, and you were cutting across all that. So at what point did you get involved in committees in Westminster? Because before that, I didn't really see a way that the public could interact with their politicians.
It's a really good question, and I think it's an important thing to realise that, first of all, if you want to meet your MP, you can meet your MP. Anyone can meet their MP, and you don't have to meet them in Westminster. You can meet them in your constituency. So and most MPs return to their constituencies on Thursday, and then normally have what's called a surgery on Friday or Saturday to meet their concerned constituents. So that's one thing. There was at the time what's called an APPG, which is an all-party parliamentary group called APGOR for animal welfare, and a lot of us used to go there. It was every sort of 3 months, every quarter, and they used to discuss stuff like puppies in pet shops or abattoirs or exotic pets, and it got quite heated sometimes. It was great to be a spectator. I used to sit on the table rather than a chair with my shirt out, being a bit rebellious. Looking back, rarely said anything until the quite a famous meeting when it was the pet shops and the pet industry was discussed, and then I just kind of went a bit. Yeah, it was pretty heated. But so I started to, and of course, when social media was kind of just starting, Twitter was really just coming into its own. So you'd start meeting people that you saw from Twitter.
Right.
You know, you'd meet, you know, as I said before, people like Shakira and just so many campaigners and small to mid-sized charities, and you'd meet them and hang out afterwards and get drunk in the Red Lion afterwards, you know, in Westminster. And something was changing, because it was a time for, as you say, it was always behind closed doors, and now people were enjoying being in the company of other campaigners and interested and sharing other campaigns and learning stuff from other campaigners. And it was a very exciting time, because no one really knew. Well, I didn't know what I was doing, but others didn't either. But we were all kind of learning together and sharing our experiences, and it almost became a social club where we'd go, hey, it's you, and it's you, and it's like we'd stay there for 2 hours and then go to the pub. But we were learning subconsciously, I guess, we were learning about the processes of Westminster. And importantly, if anyone wants to campaign, especially to change the law, there's kind of a template you have to follow. And you have to do it, not in the right order necessarily, but it's easier to do it in the right order, which is the petition, and it is meeting the MPs, and it is maybe having MP drop-ins, and it is attending, you know, select committee inquiries and different APPG meetings, to learn how it works. And another tip, if you like, MPs really understand a certain type of language. So you'll hear them go, with respect. You know, I hope the right honourable gentleman will agree with me. There's lots of phrases that they use and terminology it's kind of the language. So when I was campaigning every night, you know, I was working in the day as a vet, campaigning at night, I'd put on again the repeat on BBC Parliament of The Day in the Commons. And on my days off, I'd have it in the background all the time. So it's a bit like, you know, when you're young and someone says, if you play a French tape and go to sleep, you wake up speaking fluent French. It was that. It was a drip feeding of the language of Westminster when you're not really listening to it. And all of a sudden, all your communications, your emails, your tweets, your briefings, every time you communicate with a politician, you're using their language.
Wow.
And that is so vital to making any progress whatsoever, because you're showing them respect. They're able to digest that information quicker than before, you know, if you just wrote it as yourself. And it definitely made a difference to learn, you know, I mean, one of the biggest phrases you could ever learn, as I've mentioned already, is with respect. With respect means I don't agree with you.
Yes.
But when you prefix with respect, all that animosity just disappears.
Yes.
And you're actually able to have a conflicting confrontation sometimes, but in a polite, ordered way. And that is crucial, because a lot of this is face-to-face stuff. And a lot of stuff is stuff that you're going to disagree with. And there's a lot of respect given before you actually lay on why they're wrong. And it's tough. But
I noticed something, a little pattern here from what you've been saying. When you were a student, when you were a kid, you immersed yourself in the animal world to become a straight A student. And then you had this period of, oh, I've done that and I'm going to have fun. And I think you've used the same absolute sort of tunnel vision to learning how to change the law and how to lobby and how to, because no one else goes to bed listening to I rate this to you, Mark. I think you're the only person that's ever done that, to learn the language of politics. I think that shows real devotion, and that you have morphed into a lobbyer, but only because you were keen to do what you were doing. Probably the difference between you and the packs of lobbyists that are up and down the corridors is you're not for sale. You're only selling something you believe in.
Yeah.
So it's and when you are meeting all these different politicians, you're only asking them to be good people, to do the right thing. You're not asking them to do something evil with, you know, tobacco or something else that's going to harm. You're only asking them to do what they grew up wanting to be, a politician who makes the world better. So I think you were someone that they looked forward to seeing, because you weren't going to make them do anything horrible. You just wanted them to do the right thing, and that's why most of them became politicians. So I suspect the relationships you've built with these politicians, you've developed trust, because you've made them look good. You've made them, you've made their constituents see them as human and see them as people who listen and then have actually done something tangible. Because let's get back to the actual, how on earth you managed to do this, because we think politics is difficult at the moment because it's a pandemic. But when Lucy's Law came in, we were in the middle of Brexit. Nothing was getting through. It was so let's rewind. How did you go from a hugely successful but ultimately repelled parliamentary debate, where you suddenly became aware of there is a secret level, a glass ceiling here, where all the people who make money out of pets,
the problem,
were able to quietly snipe away and say, no, I'm sorry, we're not having that. And when you did start peeling back those layers, you didn't think of running for the hills. You actually thought, no, game on, I'm going to fight.
I and this sounds weird, but I almost knew too much about lobbying, and it's not something you can teach anyone to do. And I can't see anyone else being stupid enough to spend that much time doing it. And sort of, I mean, what you said before is a bit like becoming a method actor, really. You sort of you embrace everything to do with that. with political campaigning, and you become that lobbyist focused on that goal. And I think a lot of the secret of our success was to keep your mission statement so simple, and to ban third-party sales of puppies and kittens. That was it. And we never deviated.
Not just a problem.
Yeah, it was a solution, because you can never sell, as you know, you can never sell a puppy or a kitten by a third party and benefit animal welfare. Never. No, and that's not just the puppy or the kitten, but of course its mum as well. So that was always the goal. How we went for a debate that was thrown out of the House of Commons after 3 hours of everyone else saying this is a great idea to achieving was because we took lots of deep breaths, I think is the secret to that. It's very easy to react, it's very easy to blame, it's very easy to go on social media and be angry, but we didn't. We retracted into our shells, and we came up with another game plan and another game plan and another game plan. And I played a lot of chess with my dad when I was young, and I didn't really realise that back then it was actually training my brain strategy and the long game. You know, this is something that took 10 years, you know, to get over the line from when I first saw the puppies in my practice. So it was a case of it's going to happen. We just don't really know how it's going to happen. So, but of course, the parliamentary tools that are out there, from the petitions to the drop-ins to rallies outside Westminster, speaking in committees, social media stuff, those tools are all there. The main thing that happened was in 2016, there was what's called a select committee inquiry into the Animal Welfare Act, because it was the 10th anniversary of the Animal Welfare Act, and they looked very closely at puppy farming and third-party selling, as well as loads of other issues. And select committees work by, it's a group of 10 MPs cross-party, and they scrutinise existing legislation with a view of making it better. And they invite, over weeks and months, they invite experts in, and vets and animal welfare experts and charities, and they all give evidence, and then they take all the evidence away, and they come back and they go, the government should do this, because we've heard the experts, and this can be improved. So we had this select committee inquiry, and bless her, Julia was our representative, because she was the most knowledgeable about the minutiae of the legislation, and she just gave the most phenomenal performance, and you could see them all going, wow, she knows her stuff. On the flip side, we had quite a few animal welfare organisations that turned up that had supported us, what we were doing when we did our first e-petition, that were now starting to U-turn and almost refuse to support what we were doing, which was very surprising, very depressing. But it exposed the organisations and the industry-related people, let's say, were kind of all working together against what we wanted. And we didn't really know why, but we weren't going to let it put us off. The select committee then, 5 of them went to Wales, and they went to visited a legal licensed puppy farm. They gave them 2 months' notice that they were coming, and they were still horrified at the state of the dogs. And Chris Davis, who was an ex-Tory MP for Brecon, he actually came out with a statement that dogs just couldn't be dogs. And it's that hard hitting, and it still gives me, you know, goosebumps. And he was right. And they came back, and to be honest, I know this now, when they went to Wales, they weren't going to recommend a ban. When they came back from Wales, they were all united in calling for a ban on third-party sales. The report came out, and then of course you've got to wait for the government's response. You know, this is 10 MPs, they've been to a puppy farm, they've heard the experts, and now they're recommending to ban third-party sales, again in line with the original petition, in line with all the MPs, in line with the public, in line with celebrities. Government came back, they're not going to do it. And that was early 2017, and I think it was the worst time of the campaign. I had a meeting with, so Simon Hart, some of you may know the name, he's a Tory MP for Pembrokeshire, massive fox hunter, massive blood sports enthusiast. However, loves dogs, charming man. And one of the most fun meetings we ever had in Westminster with me and him, because obviously, you know, I was a bit intimidated by him. You know, he's known for this sort of being a character and blood sports guy. And we had this meeting in Portcullis House, and I remember how many people walked past going, sort of, what are they doing together? But he was influential because he was on the select committee himself, but also his constituency, of course, was Pembrokeshire, which is Puppy Farm Central. So he was keen to help, and he really was a phenomenal help, to the point where when the government was taking so long to respond to the recommendations, I said to Simon, I said, can you call a meeting with the minister, because this has gone on far too long and now we're being suspicious. he had actually been at the Countryside Alliance with the minister, Lord Gardner. So they were old friends. So he called this meeting, got the meeting, which is rare to get a minister's meeting like that. Had this meeting. It was me, Julia, and it was Simon Hart, and it was the civil servants, and it was the minister. And we were like, so what's going on? And he was like, we're not doing it. We're not going to take this recommendation, and we're going to reject it. So I was obviously upset. Julia was upset. We had all the evidence. We were like, but why? Why? How? And he kind of hinted that there were certain organisations that weren't prepared to back, which they were listening to over us and over just doing what's right. And I remember being so angry, which I rarely got in Westminster, but when there's such injustice to animal welfare and you're face to face with the decision maker, you have to let rip. Well, you don't have to, but you can't not. And I remember saying to the minister, no one's leaving this room until we find out who's responsible. I was eye to eye with him. What am I doing? And he said, I can't tell you, it's confidential. And I said, okay, we're going to play it my way. I said, I'm going to tell you who I think it is, and you're going to say yes or no. And before he had a chance to agree with me, I reeled off the organisations I thought it was, and he said, yeah, it's them.
Oh.
And I mean, you know who I'm talking about, but I'm not.
It was Doggy Watergate. It really was. I mean, it was
unbelievable.
Scandal. But in my journalistic lifetime, you just would never have seen this coming. Ever.
And especially as the organisations in question had all supported the original petition. You know, I'd gone to their rescue shelters, had a nice picture. I'd got, you know, they'd shared it on their Facebook page. So we had now this information of why our campaign hadn't progressed. And I remember leaving Westminster with Julia. She was in tears. I was close. And we went to St Pancras because she had to go back to Ashford. And we had a coffee together. She was bawling her eyes out. I think I did cry at the time because we were like, how on earth are we going to get this campaign back running when we're up against some of the richest animal welfare charities in the UK, the pet industry and the government, and there's 5 of us doing it in our spare time with no money and no experience.
It was David and Goliath time. It really was.
It was the lowest point I think I've ever felt in my life, obviously apart from losing family members. But it was so personal, and there was, I mean, we were now years into this campaign, and we put everything into it, and it's like, how can it still not happen? And then, of course, at the same time, I mean, I was friends with Lisa, who owned Lucy, and we were hanging out a lot, and sadly, I mean, 3 years before, Lisa had adopted Lucy from a puppy farm. Lucy was a Cavalier, nicely pictured in your background. Lucy was one of the most incredible dogs I've ever met, brave and funny and cheeky and just loved cake, and just considering how badly treated she was by humans, like any ex-breeding dog, she just was so happy all the time. And Lisa, who's watching, hi Lisa, for me is an example of someone who, again, no resources as such, but the impact she made with Lucy in terms of calendars, with Lucy wearing different things or movie themes, in terms of holding little notes saying, my name's Lucy, I'm from a puppy farm, in terms of meeting celebrities, in terms of going to events. For one person to raise that much awareness using, in the nicest way, a dog, to every day, twice a day, 3 times a day, a post about puppy farming awareness, a post about rescue pet adoption, mind-blowing. So by the time this dark day came, sadly she passed away.
Oh no!
Like 2 months before, in December 2016.
Oh dear.
And it was a case of, but by then, Lucy the Rescue Cavalier, the Facebook page, which still exists, and please everyone like it, and go back and meet Lucy, virtually. But that's where my dad's influence came in, because he was obviously in branding and advertising, and it was like, how can you fight this fortress of power and money and the ear of the government, everything, with the resources we had? And I just thought, the campaign to ban commercial third-party puppies and kittens can be so neatly crystallized into honouring little Lucy.
Yes.
And I thought it has to be Lucy's Law.
It was genius. It really was, Mark. Because Lucy, to many people, puppy farming, they just saw breaking up the little gorgeous puppies, and our brains turn to mush when we see a gorgeous little puppy. No matter how sick, no matter what crook is selling it, our brains turn to mush. But with Lucy, we got to meet the breeding slave that previously had been invisible. And we got to realize that actually that's a real dog, and that dog's life is usually never ends. It's stuck in a loveless shed somewhere, just pumping out puppies that are removed, and just litter after litter until their body's exhausted. Lucy was one of the rare few that got out at the end of her breeding career, and people all around, Lisa, if anyone hasn't yet met Lisa, is a very glamorous lady, and to have such a glamorous lady at events carrying a dog, and then Lucy was, she bore the scars of that awful life. She had a blind in one eye, but she still loved, and she still trusted, and she was, you just knew there would been years wasted of that dog's life. And that was the magic, was that, yeah, Lisa made real the breeding slaves. And you just, and the fact that I remember when Lucy got ill at the very end, and I remember the desperate call for help where Lisa was looking for oxygen to move Lucy from one place to the next. And it was desperate to give her a little bit more time, because it really wasn't enough time.
No, and it was for when she did get ill, it was fairly sudden, because she'd been relatively healthy. I mean, she had health problems, separation anxiety, and epilepsy, and dry eye, and cataract, and arthritis, and all these problems that she'd been sort of crippled with from the puppy farm experience. But she held her own, and she attended events. She'd snore through speeches, and people were giggling. I mean, even asleep, she was the biggest character in the room.
Yeah.
But as you say, at the end, it was this such a desperate, it was the link to puppy farms. And I remember meeting Lisa and Lucy, I think it was at LiveAid in 2013, I think, when she was only recently out at the puppy farm, and seeing her, I think Lisa was even carrying her around the ring because she couldn't walk, and thinking there's something about those two that's just so interesting. And Lucy as a character was just, I've never met really a dog like her before.
No.
And it was,
we gave them incredible. A reward. So I remember I'd never met Lisa before, but I'd seen what she was doing online, and meeting Lucy, it was like meeting some massive celebrity. And I was trying to I tried to get her into a big posh charity ball, and I just couldn't believe that they were looking for celebrities. I mean, this was a doggy celebrity. Why wasn't she invited? So
well, yeah, now we know.
Yeah. But well, yeah, some of those big charities, well,
at the time we really didn't know. Now it's a little bit more obvious, some of the behavior that we encountered and experienced. But I mean, when I came up with it, the first thing I did, I remember I was spaying a dog at my vet practice when I was working along the coast in Peacehaven. I just clicked about Lucy's Law. And the first thing I always did with ideas, which is the same as I do now, is ring Linda from Carryad. She's like my confidant on all things, well, most things, but definitely everything campaigning. I was like, and she's also from a marketing background. So I was like, I think we've got something, Lucy's Law. And I think we both started sort of welling up, because it was such an emotional time. And it was the last throw of the dice. It's like, what else can you do when you're up against that much power and you've got nothing? And I remember then, so she knew, and then I went to a dog show, I think it was the Mayhew dog show on Hampstead Heath, and I went up to Lisa, I said, I need to ask you something. I was like, can we use your dog? It's a very good friend of hers, obviously. Can we use your dog as the face of the campaign called Lucy's Law? She started crying. I think I started, every step was just so emotional, because it meant so much to us that we got success for the dogs. Then I told Peter Egan, who was there, and he started crying, because we were all so heavily invested in this campaign. And then, of course, okay, well, then we're going to call it Lucy's Law. And with that, obviously, we knew that a lot of organisations were watching us and were prepared to sabotage what we were doing, and some of them obviously successfully, as we've learned. So we had to launch Lucy's Law in Westminster without anyone knowing what we were doing. And that was fascinating. So, and that was, so between summer and December, we were planning the launch. Now, how do you plan a launch? And how do you invite people to an event which they actually have no idea what they're going towards, attending, which was such a challenge. So we did. So we booked the room in Westminster. It was December the 8th, in 2017, and it was pretty much a year on from when Lucy passed. So it was the anniversary week. We booked X Factor star Lucy Spraggan. Yes. Because she was a famous Lucy and she was a dog owner and she had lots of followers. We always tried to be a bit creative. And then the way we got people in the room and people to speak, Peter Egan and the most incredible licensing barrister who we'd only really just recently met, called Sarah Clover, and yourself and Adam from Our Dogs, and we already teamed up with the Mirror as an official media partner, was to basically construct an online ex-breeding dog survey. And Linda did that with Sue and Julia, and I think Philippa as well. I think she'll still campaigning with us then. And we launched this online survey with a view to announcing the results at this event in Westminster. And of course, we had to go through with the survey, which was actually a really useful survey, with all the problems that ex-breeding dogs encounter, like nightmares and separation anxiety, etc. But when it came to it, and we filled the room as you were there, I think it was the Terrace Pavilion on the Thames, beautiful room. Very lovely room. Yeah. We basically said, actually, you're not really here for that. You're here for this. And we pulled back the banners. And we've done the branding and it was just beautiful. And I designed, again, through my dad, I wish you could see all this. I designed the logo. Joe. I designed the logo for Lucy's Law, and then the Mirror sort of turned it into this fantastic logo. It's pink. It's not breast cancer pink. We have to be very careful which pink, because that's a slightly pink, lighter pink. This is Lucy's favourite colour was pink. The hashtag obviously is just a gift as an alliteration. And this was one of the favourite pictures from Lisa of Lucy. So we used we stacked the text just to make it really quite cool and modern looking. And then, of course, all of a sudden, we're at the launch of Lucy's Law, which no one had a clue about. Literally, there was about 5 people in the room who knew what was going to happen. Peter Egan did a speech, and cross-party MPs spoke. I spoke, obviously, and Linda spoke. And it was launched. And this was at the end of 2018. We never anticipated how popular it would become within minutes, seconds, hours, weeks. As you know, it completely took off. And it was one of the most incredible things to watch go viral from campaigners who had nothing. And it went mad. Just a bit before you had the big reveal, my first ever trip to AppDog, which is this parliamentary, I'm rubbish on initials, but it's the dog version of the all parliamentary group. I'd never been to one of those before, and I'd sort of crept in, because I didn't go out much in that era. I was quite reclusive, and I felt quite shy and intimidated, because it's a hugely big place, isn't it? There's so many important people, and it was a crammed meeting, and it was revealed that someone had spiked the EFRA. It was EFRA and DEFRA, wasn't it? There was a So EFRA is the name of the select committee. Yeah. And DEFRA is the government department that they scrutinise the legislation and make recommendations to. So you're absolutely right. We have kind of jumped a few months. There was tension in that room, because the reason that happened was because when we found out exactly who was responsible for sabotaging what we were asking for, I had this joint briefing from the 2 organisations that DEFRA had given me, unbelievably. So I had the evidence. Now, for a campaigner to reveal who had done this, you're not going to get very far, because everyone's going to turn around and go, "You're a liar. What are you talking about? No way are they going to be against this." Yeah. So what I did, this was really chatting with Rob Fellow, who was the Labour MP at the time, was because there was already an all-party parliamentary group for animal welfare, which a lot of the big charities were part of. We thought the only thing we can really do is almost have a court case scenario where I reveal the evidence in front of them and they have to defend it or not.
Yeah.
Now, they didn't know I had the evidence, but going back to AppDog, so AppDog is the all-party dog advisory welfare group, which is basically an APPG for dog welfare. And one of the few people who's managed to get the acronym through, because normally it's the APPG for dog welfare. I remember going to the office and saying, please, 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 can we call it AppDog? Because it's just obviously an anagram. And it was Rob Fellow called it AppDog. I didn't think of it myself. And they were like, all right, just this once. So we had this all-party parliament officially set up. Again, took ages to set up. Really, really difficult to set up an APPG from scratch because it's a parliamentary thing. It's an official organisation. And I remember I co-chaired it with Rob, and we got all the charities to come in, and you came, and Peter Egan, and all these people. And there was tension because everyone kind of knew what was happening and knew what was going on. But no one knew I had the evidence in my back pocket. They just knew that. And anyway, one of the charities, I think a few of them sent people just to read statements. One of the big ones sent actually someone, and I remember saying, but that doesn't explain why you lobbied and blocked and sabotaged what we were asking for, and I think they denied it. And I said, well, can you explain? Do you remember that moment? Can you explain this then? And I read it out, and it was like a Tom Cruise 90s courtroom drama.
It was a film. It really was. It should be a film. Because I remember my heart was beating so hard because it was the tension, because there was somebody sitting there who knew they were guilty, basically, and everyone in the room was looking at them. And then I remember I stood up near the end and went, the time for change is now. It was sort of not, because they were saying, oh no, not now, but we've got to fix all these other things first. We can't do this because it was just like, what? This is the best chance we've ever had. Why?
And the funny thing was, they were calling for exactly the same thing years before. They'd supported the campaign. They'd shared the petition. It was like, why are you U-turning? And every excuse they were giving was speculation, and everything we were doing was evidence-based. Yeah. So the tide was definitely turning, but it was important to expose who was responsible for blocking what we were trying to do in Westminster, and in order to move on. And I think that was probably maybe the biggest turning point of the whole campaign. Yeah, it was. I felt like I was watching history. It was really an amazing evening. And I remember thinking, well, it's a new beginning now, because it's sort of like, everything's out in the open. And everyone in that room had so much passion. And it was a pressure cooker. Yeah, we were waiting, but we needed to, you got them all going, and then we needed a campaign. We needed something to push for, and a call to action. Yeah, we needed something to focus all those people, because it was a very disparate group of people. There was people who didn't normally get on, were all for once got the blinkers on and going, I'm not going to look at what I disagree with here. I'm only going to see what I agree with. And it united a huge number of people that were individuals and weren't just doing it for a salary. These were people who were doing it for the heart, for the heart and the brain. So yes, you had unleashed something. And yes, that launch then gave people something to push. So what came next? Well, we had the reveal that you've been talking about who was responsible, and it was out in the open. And your article in Dogs Today, I remember, was fantastic, because you were so forensic with what had happened at the meeting. And if anyone can get, it would probably be May 2017 or something issue. Something like that. It was fantastic. PDFs of it, but I'm afraid you're very nice. You don't. But over the years, if a charity's misbehaved, I tend to out it, because I think, well, it's our money. They've got our money. They shouldn't be doing things that we general public disagree with.
And I thought it was quite an outrage, really.
And
So,
I think it's definitely worth noting at this point that we're only talking about sort of the big corporate behaving charities. The small to mid-sized charities are just, we love them and we always will.
Well,
this was just very unexpected and very surprising -- disappointing behaviour.
I weirdly still love charities who haven't been naughty. I mean, because the way I look at it is, yes, they can. There's some bad things, but there's usually more good than bad. And it's a mixture. So I think you need somebody, whether it's the media or someone, needs to be looking over their shoulders to just make sure that people are noticing that they are doing the right thing, and that we need them. We need charities really, really desperately in this sector, but we also need them not to just be good at making money. We need them to be good at actually getting down to the causes of problems in welfare, and actually be fixated with change rather than measuring success by donations. And that's a charity across the spectrum. All charities suffer from this, that they become good at being charities rather than good at actually helping. So, I mean, all these charities have done fantastic things, but yeah.
And also, I think that the majority of people that work for those charities have no idea what's going on in Westminster, and probably 99% of workers for those charities, whether they're in the kennels or whatever, are just working and just doing some amazing work.
Yeah,
you know, we're talking about policy influencing rather than the actual work with the animals.
Yeah, it's really, deep down why you, because I think that's the thing. The bigger an organisation gets, the more difficult it is for somebody to control direction. You end up being sort of trapped into, this is what we do. And I think that because all those years of having meetings in committees where people would tell the government what they thought would be required, we had lots and lots of inaction for decades. And I think that that the way the system has now changed, thanks to these committees that you've helped set up, is there's been a shortening of between experts and MPs. They're actually hearing it from individuals rather than passing through organisations and charities. But there are charities involved as well in the groups. But I do think it's many voices do keep things, fresh. But yes, so you it would be very easy to be sort of distracted by what was Doggy Watergate but the fact is, you still had to work with these people. And so what did you do next?
So I guess next, so we had the big, remember AppDog was only really set up for that particular meeting. Obviously.
Really? I didn't know.
Yeah, that was the only reason we set AppDog up was for that meeting to hold those organisations to account. Of course, now, as you know, it's become a very successful group in Westminster, which I'm very proud to be sort of co-founder of and secretariat, and obviously chaired by Lisa Cameron. But we've had some amazing meetings, and everyone's welcome. AppDog, I think appdog.co.uk, people can come in. You don't have to be just come along to the meetings. Obviously, there aren't any at the moment because of COVID, but we have 4 meetings a year, and everyone's welcome. For me, it was always about making Parliament inclusive, like it was when I started, so people can meet an MP and see what happens behind the scenes, and come to Portcullis House or the Palace of Westminster. But anyway, next, so we're in, I think we're at December 2018. Lucy's sadly been passed away just over a year. We've launched Lucy's Law. Now, I've made such good contacts in Westminster that I'm now having meetings inside Number 10. And I'm now meeting directors of legislation, heads of policy, prime ministers, special advisors. It was Theresa May at the time, and Michael Gove, your local MP, isn't he? Mm-hmm. Was now the Secretary of State for the Environment for DEFRA. And for me, that was one of the biggest amazing things that happened in those days, because he started to kind of tear up his own rule book, which is to start making changes and start making promises and start listening to campaigners and start doing what's right for the environment. And he was very brutal in a good way and got stuff done, microbeads and banning this and banning that. And at the time, I was going into number 10 and I was taking in Julia and Sarah with me, my advisors. And we were meeting all these people in these amazing rooms, and it's always incredible. I mean, I love going to number 10, who wouldn't? But the tide was turning, and we were saying what we thought, and then they were taking it back to DEFRA and playing devil's advocate, coming back with all the pushback, backwards and forwards. And we were going in there maybe twice a week for these meetings. And all of a sudden, it was almost as if Michael Gove had listened and read all the evidence and gone, they're right. They're actually right. These campaigners are right. You know, and this is why they're right, because of all this evidence they're presenting. Back in the government department, obviously it was all speculation based and money based and a different dynamic. So the only way to kind of solve this, if you like, was to launch what's called a call for evidence, which is a 3-month consultation. Let the public decide what to do next. And I remember February the 8th, 2018, Theresa May, her Twitter feed, I doubt she tweeted, maybe she did, but it was like, the government is looking to ban third-party sales of puppies and kittens. Here's the link to the consultation. And I was surprised because the tweet showed intent. We're looking to ban, not should we or shouldn't we? We're looking to ban. And that was really interesting because it was like, we want to do this. And then, of course, 3 months of people thousands of people sent in evidence and documents and their experiences, from charities to individuals to campaigners. Everyone did. Meanwhile, and that was in spring 2018. Meanwhile, it was Crufts, yes. Which was in March in 2018. And I thought, right, how do we keep this momentum going? And I thought, let's do another. Actually, number 10 said, make it look popular with the public, because you're more likely to get it over the line. Yeah. So I was like, okay, we've got Crufts Sunday on Mother's Day. How there's something in this. And I remember thinking, I think I was talking to Linda about this, like I always did. Let's make a 3-meter high giant Mother's Day card with Lucy's face in the middle. Get a load of rosettes, which people at dog shows love. That's the first time the rosettes were, I think Charlie at Birdbrook produced them for free, about 1,000 of them.
Yes.
And we went to Crufts and we were on the nutriment. Hello, Charlie. And we went to the nutriment stand, who were sponsoring Pup Aid at that point. Lovely nutriment people, who are also quite near you. Yes. Geographically, and we had this 3-meter by 2-meter Mother's Day card saying "Happy Mother's Day?" ? And of course, we had the petition. We'd launched the petition. We were giving out flyers with the petition link. The link was on the thing, and of course, this was causing a nice kerfuffle. Let's say, yeah. People coming over. They're walking around Crufts with their pink thing on, and all of a sudden, of course, the film crew came over. And I must say, the Kennel Club have always been fantastic with us, with the campaigning. They've always supported us. So, of course, the Kennel Club came over. One of the presenters for the TV show came over. And we had this photo call with Peter Purvis. Yes. And were you there? No, your colleague was there.
No, I was recording it on the television.
That's right. But, and suddenly, this whole energy, and then they said we're going to use it on the show on Sunday night. So just before Best in Show on the Sunday night, when peak audience figures, Claire Balding is basically introducing this item that we filmed, and then said, and if you're online, sign and share the petition now. And of course, we got about 20,000 signatures that hour. It had already gone crazy because obviously the relationships I had online with celebrities like Ricky and Peter and Brian May and people like that had already pushed it. And then 2 days later, Rachel Riley did a little piece to camera on her Twitter feed, and we got the 100,000. And we got it in 13 days that time, right? And we got it, and we had this debate in May. I mean, we're talking nearly 2 years ago. And the debate, as you know, and you need to be credited for what you did during this campaign, because I remember you put an envelope together with a rosette and a brief. You designed the briefing for the debate, and you hand delivered it to Westminster. So every single one of the 650 MPs had a briefing pack designed and a rosette, and that was you. That was all you. So thank you.
But there was lots. Rosie designed it. Oh, my lovely design.
Well, you know what I mean.
What I loved about that whole thing, though, was that all the lovely MPs who came in with their printed briefing document wearing their rosettes.
Yeah, into Westminster Hall. They got told off because you're not allowed to wear it. So it was, I mean, it was an incredible day.
Yeah.
We didn't need the debate. Weirdly, we only did the petition just to show how popular it was, and obviously getting 100,000 in 13 days.
My name, Mark. It was so lovely of you. You put it in my name, that one. So that was.
Yeah,
I ended up with my name on a petition. That
there you go.
Everyone thought, "Oh gosh, how do you know Ricky Gervais?" And I thought, "Oh, wow, you know, I should do." But
it was and I remember one of the most poignant moments of that particular debate was, I remember Lisa Cameron saying to George Eustace, who was the minister at the time, if you want to make an SNP MP cry, then bring this law in and I'll cry with happiness. And I remember his little lips curling up, like almost like, well, we are going to do this. And as he walked out, and this is George Eustace, who in my debate in 2014 that they threw out, and God knows how many debates since, had always said no to banning third-party sales.
Yeah.
And as he walked out of the chamber, he just looked at me and just did a thumbs up. And I just thought, we've got it.
Yeah.
I thought, we've got it now. And then the results of the 3-month consultation came back. And I remember being at my work in Brighton. I think I'd just done a dental on a guinea pig.
Oh my goodness.
And I checked my emails, and I got an email from DEFRA saying, strictly confidential, would you supply a quote because the government is going to ban third-party sales? And the quote was next to Michael Gove's quote. And not only that, they were going to give us a garden party at number 10 for the campaigners. Now we're talking, we've done it. And the success of the 3-month consultation was over 70% came back in favour of a ban on third-party sales. The remaining 30% wasn't against all of them. They were just unsure of the mechanism. Yeah. So they launched a second consultation, and that came back 96% in favour of Lucy's Law. Meanwhile, at the garden party in August, as you well know, was one of the most surreal 2 hours of all of our lives, because we had friends, family, campaigners from all my gang, all your gang. We had Peter there, and Brian May, and Eamon Holmes. And then we had my family, and we had people, you know, like Yoni and those guys who'd been campaigning on the roadside, you know, for Linton. It was a campaign.
Dogs there. That was the thing.
Hang on, and that was the best thing for me. The best thing was the rescued puppy farm ex-breeding dogs running around the garden, because Eileen came obviously from Friends of Animals Wales, brought all these dogs, and down in Street Kitchen cooked bone-shaped treats, especially for the dogs.
Well, no, they were for humans. They were for humans as well.
Oh, really? I didn't eat anything that day. I was too excited. And then Michael Gove, of course, gave the speech. And again, not many people knew why they were there. And then Michael Gove gave a speech, and he said, you know, we're going to bring in Lucy's Law. And there was a few tears, more tears. And we'd kind of done it then. But, you know, I mean, the journey certainly wasn't over then.
No.
But it was very hard. I mean, it was, yeah, you couldn't ever go back from that point, because the government had now committed to bringing in Lucy's Law. And I remember leaving Downing Street, being the last to leave the whole garden party, and giving a speech which he filmed from the steps of number 10. And I've since found out that only prime ministers can give speeches from the steps of number 10. And apparently when I gave my speech, which was basically to thank everyone for the millionth time, the security guys were like, just leave him. He started, just let him do it. And I think for a nerdy, geeky, shy kid growing up, to delivering a speech off the cuff, which I completely hadn't planned for, which was about 2 minutes long, to people outside in number 10, was definitely a moment that I won't forget. And I was next to Lisa,
yeah.
And I was holding
was it
one of my favourites, maybe my little Minnie, my dear little Minnie, who I have a picture of by my desk, who's another ex-breeding dog, puppy farm, Bichon, who's owned actually by Lisa's sister, Sarah. And Lisa had plum pudding. Yes. And it was like the journey that we'd been on to get to that point was just so emotional.
You know, it was like a film. I mean, I keep saying this should be a film, but I was hanging around because I always like to talk to people at events where they don't look, well, just people that wouldn't expect of you to talk to them. And I noticed there was a lady who was wearing a pass that said she was a staff member. And I thought, oh, I'll find out more about her job. And I said to her, what do you do? And she said, oh, I'm Theresa May's private secretary. And she was really friendly. And I said, oh, like in Love Actually, you were Martine McCutcheon then? And she goes, we love that movie. Just, we absolutely love it. And she said, you know, this has been the most joyous thing in the whole time I've worked here, this garden party. She was meant to be on holiday, but she came back to help pit past the, you know, the trays of treats around. And everybody that worked for Theresa May were saying, you know, this has been the most delightful thing, the most joyous thing they'd ever seen. And that feeling in there of, this is something that the public wants, that the public are going to get at a time when, yeah, people had lost faith in politics completely. And I remember we'd put on our front cover, very tongue-in-cheek, when we thought it was going to happen, time to get your I Love Michael Gove t-shirts printed. And I'd brought a copy with me and I showed it to Michael and he laughed his head off. I mean, people were turning around going, what's he laughing at? And then I got a message that he wanted one of those t-shirts. But Mark, it should be a film, because you've got the Watergate, then you've got the 10 Downing Street celebration, where for the first time ever we had rescue dogs running around the garden, and we were all just, nobody was looking after us. We were allowed to wander about.
It's unbelievable.
There were millions of us. We were just having the best.
I had the guest list. I was given the guest list and told to invite who I wanted to go. And as I said, for a very geeky, nerdy kid who wasn't invited to any parties, this was the best party I could possibly organise. And of course, you know, when I was young and I was offered backstage passes to LiveAid, because I was at school with Harvey Goldsmith's nephew, and I, as you know, I turned them down because I was getting my chemistry prize that day, and that's the level of geekiness. But then obviously Brian May was at my party, so it was like, you know, it's how like a few years on, it's a very surreal. It was very surreal, and he's become obviously a very, very dear friend because of the campaigning. But yeah, just
quite gentle soul as well. Because at the garden party, where, you know, there was a plate of samosas, I think, and Brian May's hand came in to get one. And he was saying, "Is it vegetarian?" And I went, "Yes, it is. But would you like a Lucy's Law rosette?" He said, "Oh, yes, please." And I remember thinking, I never imagined that I would ever be in the situation where I would be debating samosas with Brian May. But he was just like, "Oh, really?" And then that was the thing, Mark. You've got all these very, very nice people who happen to be famous, who you sort of joined together. Now that's, you know, I mean, just out of shot, we've got a picture on this side. We've got lovely Ricky. Oh, there we go, Ricky.
Yeah.
How did you get to know him? Because he's really shy.
I got to know Ricky. First of all, we supported the same charities, so Mayhew, All Dogs Matter. So I'd see him at dog shows. You know, sometimes he'd come out and he'd help judge a dog show. I was obviously a super fan, still am. Loved The Office, loved 11 O'Clock Show, loved all the XFM podcasts, everything he's ever done. So for me, he's like a god of comedy. Still is. And there was one time when we were both asked by a charity called the Willow Foundation, which is a bit like Make-A-Wish, when they provide experiences for terminally ill kids, to paint canvases. And I painted the West Pier Starlings from Brighton, and he painted one of his Flanimals. And we were invited to the gallery launch in Hampstead. And he'd been on this morning just before, and I was watching it at home, and they did a feature on dogs and puppies. And I don't think they were mentioning rescue. And I was like, oh, Ricky's going to be really annoyed. I hadn't met him before properly. And anyway, he was at the gallery and I was there, and I plucked up enough courage to sort of go and talk to him. We'd had our picture taken with our canvases together. I was like, oh my God, I'm literally in a picture with Ricky Gervais. And I remember speaking to him in the gallery saying, saw you on this morning. It's a shame they didn't mention rescue. And he went, I did. And I just thought, brilliant. And we had a brief chat, and then and Jane, his girlfriend, as they left, I said to Jane, can I contact you because I've got a few ideas? And she's like, yeah, fine. And I think she followed me back on Twitter, so I had a direct message route. And then she sent me her email address. And really, with a lot of these big celebrities, you kind of leave them alone until you really, really need to use them in the nicest possible way. So I communicated mainly with Jane by email, and then things would happen that I'd asked to happen. And then, you know, and this is a lesson to anyone who wants to campaign. Relationship building is unbelievably important. And I'm talking, you know, I used to go to Ricky's gigs anyway, but used to drop like a card, a thank you card, or find out his favorite bottle of champagne, and you know, leave that. And when you gift celebrity stuff and you constantly say thank you, you're maintaining that relationship. So when you do need something, or even if it's one retweet, or, you know, when Lucy's Law was announced, I wrote the tweet for Ricky. I wrote 3 that he could choose from. And when you're writing a tweet for like one of your heroes, that's how crazy it got. But it was all about relationship building and presents and gifts, and really bothering them when you had to. More recently, we chat. You know, in the last few months, we chat on Twitter quite a lot, direct message, and I send him stupid stuff, and he says haha a lot. But you're conscious that you don't want to annoy people, and that's the thing. You want to praise them. Obviously, on social media, especially with the first e-petition, it was like, huge thanks to Ricky Gervais for signing and sharing the e-petition. Then you put the link in again, and then he'd retweet that 3 times, one for Australasia, one for Europe, one for America time zones. So all his fans could see that he was helping. But if you put the link in everything, then the link gets another rerun. So there's a lot of clever social media stuff going on that I was learning at the time. But Ricky has been, I mean, obviously I've met him loads of times. I've got drunk with him a couple of times now. And I would call him a friend. And he's just the biggest heart for animals. He hates injustice to animals, hates it. I mean, really, really. And to tap into that energy and basically just to give him stuff that he can then share and improve the situation for animals globally. It's a lovely relationship to have. But yeah, he's definitely one of life's good guys. He's a very, very special guy.
I must admit, I remember in the Westminster Hall debates where there was a charming Scottish male MP who was reading his speech out, and he was thanking all these social media influencers.
Martin Day it was, yeah.
And I remember he didn't know how to pronounce Ricky Gervais's name, and I was thinking, it must be the only person in Britain who doesn't know who Ricky Gervais is. But that meant that Ricky's name went into Hansard. So
it's been in there many times from our debates.
Zuella. I mean, that must have been the first time a social media influencer was credited in Hansard. So you were bringing together unusual worlds, and I think you were making the politicians feel quite relevant, and also making it seem achievable that real people could influence politics. Because I think for the first time ever, lots and lots of just normal people contacted their MPs and, you know, asked for something. Because very often I think people just don't realise that their voice actually has a value, and that they can change things, and that the MPs don't actually hear from that many people, that many real constituents. And I think that, you know, you gave hope to people that, you know, these petitions work. Because I think that's the thing, is that I think Lucy's Law was the first real big win
it was
that anybody had ever seen. And that's and when you see that what's come since, we've had Finn's Law, and Finn's Law 2 needs to get finished, and the pet theft, and there's lots of things that are have come from the people, and yeah, it's amazing stuff. But you think that, well, Theresa May's tenancy at 10 Downing Street was soon to end. So potentially, when there's an election, all your lobbying can just go out the window, really. But how did you manage to so swiftly become a close advisor to the new occupant of 10 Downing Street? Because I think you've got even closer. How did this happen?
That was. I mean, it's all crazy, really. But when I heard a rumor that number 10 were looking to adopt a rescue dog. And I knew Carrie anyway from campaigning. We'd attended a few events together and we were DMing a lot, ideas and stuff. And she's quite into her marine conservation, but she's a huge animal lover and just loveliest person. And I said, look, before you make this decision to get a rescue dog, which obviously is brilliant, can I come in and just explain a few things and just help you decide where to get the rescue dog from? So she's like, yeah, cool. I'll sit on my phone. Come into Downing Street tomorrow. I'll pick you up from the foyer at 4 o'clock, and you can come up to the flat. The flat being number 11 where they live. And this was in July, I think it was, or June, July, and they'd only just moved in. And so I was in the foyer of number 10, where I've been a few times now, and she picked me up, and I didn't have to give my phone in because I was a personal guest now. And I was sitting in their living room in number 11. Obviously, there's boxes everywhere. They haven't chosen their art yet from the Parliamentary Art Collection. And I'm like, okay, this. I thought stuff was weird, but now it's a bit weirder. So I explained about the history of Lucy's Law, and I took them rosettes, and I took them Your magazine with the Lucy's Law front cover. And we sat chatting, and I explained the backstory, and I explained where I thought they should get a rescue dog from. And obviously, it turned out to be Eileen Jones, who runs Friends of Animals Wales. And it was so funny because we were chatting, and she was like, right, we're going to do that. And then she's like, do you want a guided tour? Because we've only just moved in. I was like, yeah. So I'm being shown around number 11, the bedroom, the bathroom, the toothbrushes, Boris's pants on the floor, the walk-in wardrobe. And I'm like, this is so surreal, because if campaigning takes you to like the Prime Minister's house. Anyway, so I introduced I was there for 2 hours. I was introduced Eileen and Carrie, and Carrie said, you know, if we do go to Wales, would you come with us? We'll just take one photographer and we'll go to the rescue shelter. But Eileen's dogs are all in foster, so there's no shelter as such. Anyway, 10 days later, I'm in Spain. I've just arrived. I'm with my best mate and getting drunk, and then of course the phone rings, and there's this posh voice on the other end of the phone saying hello, and I was like, hello. And it's Boris here. I'm with Carrie, and we've decided on Dylan, and how can we make this happen? And anyway, so this conversation went on for about 10-15 minutes, and I was quite drunk. And anyway, we sorted it out for September. They say, are you abroad? I said, yeah, I'm in Spain. I'm terribly sorry to interrupt your holiday. I said, like, Prime Minister, you can interrupt whenever you want. And it was a mobile number, which obviously is his personal mobile, which I've still got on my phone. So I answered it, which I never normally do. And anyway, we lined up for 2nd of September. And of course, Dylan, the Jack Russell Cross ex-puppy farm, undershot jaw, was going to be drowned, now becomes the face of rescue dogs for the UK. And he was representing rescue, representing Lucy's Law, representing third party, representing the fact you can get puppies in rescue, and representing volunteer run rescue like Eileen as well. Yes. And then we had the photo call in the garden, and Dylan was running around, and Boris was running around. And I remember one point I said, Boris, would you mind putting on the Lucy's Law rosette? And he said, yeah, I'd be delighted to. And that was the moment, probably of all the 10 years, that I thought, wow, for a grassroots campaigner to ask the Prime Minister to wear their campaign rosette, and obviously for him to say, yeah, of course, no problem. And just to see him putting it on was like, we've done it. You know, we've from zero, less than zero, to being here now with the Prime Minister, after 10 years. And that for me was one of the most incredible moments of my life. You know, to have gone that whole spectrum of nothing to PM.
And what were you wearing? Because were you wearing, because your suits, when every time I've always said you look very smart, Mark, and you've always then said that it's your father's suit. So at the garden party especially, and through, I never had suits. My dad very rarely wore suits. He was very jeans and shirt, t-shirt and trainers kind of guy, because he was an artist in a world of suits and advertising. So I've always been quite scruffy as well.
And I've always worn, I've always tried to wear his suits, and I've always wear his watch whenever I do anything huge, and it's kind of life-changing, because then he's kind of there with me. So yeah.
Well, he was on every news, wasn't he? Because you were pictured walking up 10 Downing Street with the puppy.
Yes.
And I remember seeing it, thinking it's one of his dad's suits, and I thought that was so lovely. So it just makes, and the fact that your family must be so proud, Mark, because really it's a huge thing you've achieved. I mean, it's just phenomenal. I mean, it has, sure, I mean, you've got the best-selling book. It's gone a bit funny with me, but that's got to be a film, Mark. Surely someone's optioned it by now.
Well, who knows what will happen. It has done well. It's sold well. It's been bestseller on Amazon in 3 categories. It's been animal rights, veterinary, which is quite expected, but also 21st century history. It's actually done really well, and I think it's like, for someone who had no idea and still doesn't really about history, to actually write a book that's now looking like a historical book. There was a word, but it's gone. It's just a weird feeling. But the more people that obviously read the book, the more people will realize that actually anyone can do this. You know, you don't have to have this background in politics or history. Tools are there. You just have to believe in what you want to achieve. You have to be prepared to wait, and you have to be prepared to deal with a hell of a lot of crap from some of the most unlikeliest organizations, as you well know. But as long as your campaigning mission statement is simple, and you can prove that what you're trying to do is evidence-based and is the right thing to do. I mean, we hear this phrase a lot at the moment, this sort of being on the right side of history. And it's true, it is doing what's right. And, you know, there's so much in the news at the moment, obviously slavery and things that happened in the past. And I think there's a Martin Luther King quote, which is, you know, the arc of the moral universe always bends towards justice. And it's almost like things are bad in the past, but they do get better. But there are people that just need to get them better. And I think, you know, selling puppies in pet shops is a thing of the past. That should never have happened. And now we're past that. I'm incredibly proud. And not only that, we've got Wales and Scotland who have also agreed and promised and committed to Lucy's Law. They haven't just set their dates yet. Lucy's Law is influencing in America. It's influencing Victoria's Law, which is now in Pennsylvania. They're fighting for that. And it showed that, as you say, that you can actually change stuff from just being a member of the public who won't give up, really. So yeah, there's lots of messages in there, but I'm thrilled with it.
I'm very, very proud of knowing you, Mark, because I reckon you will be remembered in decades to come. Because also, I remember I did a very silly little speech at Apdorg, just the one before everyone goes home, where I compared you to Ginsburg, the Supreme Court judge in America, because she had taken on the American legislation, because in her era it was tremendously sexist. Every law was wrong near enough because of the way it treated women, and it was an enormous task, and she couldn't even get a job as a lawyer, even though she was the top lawyer. And what you've started to do is you've taken our ancient laws and made it reflect that, to us, the pet is part of our family and needs to be protected. And it's just so lovely seeing the ripples from that, because we've seen Finn's Law, where a police dog before was seen as just property, just like damage to a car rather than a sentient being. And we saw awful things happening to police horses at the weekend. It was horrible, wasn't it, to see an animal frightened. And that we're now seeing pet theft, which we were involved in right at the beginning as well, where the moment a pet...
By the way, that's campaigning against it, not stealing pets, just to
yes.
Just to clarify.
Dear. Yes, I'm getting into all sorts of deep water there. But the law sees the pet as a thing, as just like a wallet or a phone. So there's no deterrence. So there are so many laws that are out of kilter with because we love, and in lockdown, I think everybody's fallen back in love with the pet. But lockdown has also been quite testing for, I mean, we should have had the big launch in April of Lucy's Law. It would have been rather bad timing to have a pandemic at the same time, because we hadn't really got a chance to celebrate the law coming in.
It will happen. It will happen. It will happen another time. I mean, obviously with the pandemic, thoughts are more with families that have lost loved ones, etc. So all that stuff will happen. But I'm just, what I love about the whole Lucy's Law campaign is how many people were involved in it. I was the idiot that kind of went into Westminster and sort of kept it on track, if you like. But it was millions of people were involved in this campaign. It was from celebrities to MPs to my bunch of campaigners to yourself. It touched so many people's lives and animals' lives, and that for me was the people power. And governments will always listen to what's popular. They may not act immediately, but they will always listen to what's popular. Hence the e-petition. The e-petition is a beautiful way of showing how popular an idea is. And even if it doesn't achieve the law the first time, it raises awareness in the process. And I love the fact that all the tools were used, I mean, sometimes twice, 3 times, to get the Lucy's Law over the line. And one thing's really important for people that are watching to realise is that animal welfare makes up such a huge proportion of mailbags for MPs. Like, it's sometimes the biggest thing that MPs hear about. So if you do have something that is annoying you, or that you've seen, that you want to change and improve animals' lives or the most vulnerable, get in touch with your MP. And if they don't respond, send another email. They're busy, they've got people shouting at them 24/7. If you can't get a meeting with your MP, meet their assistant. They've all got assistants. They've all got assistants that can meet you a lot quicker. And that assistant will take what you give them and show the MP. So there are ways of doing this. And Portcullis House and Westminster, I mean, I live in Brighton, I'm not in London, but it was worth going to London all those times. I mean, I went over 300 times to Westminster in those 6 years. And every single time I made progress. I didn't know at the time. Sometimes I thought I was actually going backwards. But when you look back at why stuff was happening that I didn't know about, the reasons for, it actually now all makes sense. Some of the decisions that were made, it's like, well, hang on, that's not right. But when you look back, it's like, okay, well, I didn't know that yet. And I didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. But the tools are all there for anyone to make a difference. And I would urge everyone to, from retweeting something on Twitter, to setting up an e-petition, to setting up an event like LiveAid we did, to working with a celebrity. Remember, celebrities, mayors, MPs, all like to be involved with stuff that makes them look good. This is a two-way conversation, I mean, massive celebrities like Ricky, Brian May, obviously they don't need to do this, they do it, and they're prolific at it, incredible. They don't even do it once, they just carry on doing it because they want to do it. But on the whole, everyone benefits from that situation. And tap into that energy, because you're giving them something to look good about.
Yes.
And especially at the moment, you've got, politics is crazy at the moment. And to give politicians something that's really meaningful, like the pet theft, we sat in on that debate, on the conversation of the day together, didn't we? Yes. And you could see, it was a great, Tom Hunt, a Conservative for Ipswich, so fired up with wanting to do what's right. It was really great to see. And I said to you afterwards, we had confidence that he will push this through without doubt, because he gets it and he understands why it's important.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. It's a great cross-party thing, because it's something broken that everyone can agree needs fixing, and it's tremendously popular with the constituents. So, and it doesn't cost anything to do. I mean, it's and often I've from talking to some of the MPs that you've befriended and I've then got to know, very often it's the bit that their mum and dad care most about, because it means something to them. They've made a difference. They've changed history, and that's why they became a politician. So you, in a way, you've restored some individual politicians' faith in the system as well as the general public. So, and you've hopefully inspired a whole new generation to get in there and start making their voice heard. But gosh, we've been talking for 2 hours, Mark. This is possibly the longest Facebook Live anyone's ever had. I can't actually see Facebook from here. Can you see? Have we still got anyone listening to us? Has anyone asked?
I think they've all gone to bed. I think they've all gone to bed. There's 50% have gone to bed and 50% have started e-petitions.
Oh, well, it's been a joy talking to you. Is there anything we've not covered? I think, you know.
I would say that I would say thank you to everyone who, you know, Dogs Today and Dogs Monthly readers and followers and supporters for signing and sharing your petitions and supporting the campaign. We literally couldn't have done it without everybody involved. And I'd also say that one of my huge thanks to Lisa, Lucy's owner, because to have your dog's face appear everywhere for 3 years now, 4 years now, must be hard. It must be tough. So huge love goes to her, and also to Linda and Sue and Julia, my campaigning gang. And we never gave up. There was never even a hint of giving up.
No.
And you know, Philippa, who sadly didn't see the end, neither did my dad, neither did Lucy. But the contribution these individuals made is phenomenal. And a huge thanks and love to all of those people, dead or alive, that have helped make this happen and help, you know, make a brighter future for dogs and cats in the UK. And I'd also say another quote. I'm not really a quote person, but the Dalai Lama, there's a great quote from the Dalai Lama that says, and this is a campaigny quote, "If you think you're too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito." And for me, that's just, it's just in a nutshell, anyone can do it. You just need a vision. You need the right people around you. You need to ignore people that try and block you. And that goes for trolls as well, and people that argue online and all that nastiness. And I just have to say that the trolls that we've experienced over the last few years, not one of them has provided a solution, but people are quite happy to criticize with misinformation. It's like, really? Either come up with something better or just don't bother. But I would say thanks for, you know, obviously to you, because you've been instrumental in the whole campaign as well. And if you really want to read more, I will plug it again. If you really want to read more, then this is available on Amazon. And I think you'll find it interesting, not just from an animal welfare point of view, but for the whole campaigning and learning how to make a difference with little to no resources. So get your copy of Lucy's Law and enjoy it, and realize how much we fought for a third-party ban on puppies and kitten sales in the UK, and hope it inspires you to fight for something that you believe in, because it's possible, and do it.
Yeah. Oh, lovely to talk to you, Mark, and inspirational as always. And it's been a joy watching you grow and succeed, because really, yeah, I'm looking forward to the film, and I've suggested that it's either Tom Hardy or Jason. I can't even say his name. Jason Strachan? No.
Jason Statham, I think you mean. And weirdly, there's a link back, because when I did my modelling in France, Jason Statham was the model they used before me. But then he went to Hollywood, and I stuck my finger up dog's bums. So I don't know who's luckier, to be honest with you. And I will just finally say another inspiration of the campaign, which I have to mention, is my grandma, who escaped the Holocaust, escaped Nazi Germany, and she kind of taught me from a very young age that kind of anything's possible. Because her parents were murdered in Auschwitz, my great-grandparents. She came over on the Kindertransport, and she came over as a young adult German. Obviously, we were at war with Germany, so she went from being hated there to being hated here, family murdered, and made a whole life for herself. And I think my go-to default state when things were horrible on the campaign trail was, it will never be that bad.
No.
And also, anything is possible. And I think when you have those benchmarks so deeply set, the other side of my family were escaping from Spanish Inquisition. So it's a combination of escaping people, which is obviously in the blood somewhere. But my point is that nothing's as bad as the stuff that they went through. And, you know, anything is possible. And I think that kept me going. So, yeah, my grandma, who, as you know, she's 99 and she's still going and still hilarious. She was the inspiration to the campaign as well. So yeah, there's many factors.
She go to 10 Downing Street, didn't she? She was at 10 Downing
Yes.
Street. Yeah.
She did go to 10 Downing Street.
So that's yeah. It's going to be a good movie. I'm telling you, it's going to be a movie.
We'll see.
pitch to write the screenplay, you know, I'm available.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. But Beverley, thanks. It's been amazing chatting. I hope people have enjoyed it. And if you want to get in touch about campaigning tips or anything that we went through, then please just get hold of me on Twitter or Facebook, Mark the Vet, or Mark the Vet on Twitter. You know, I want to use my experience that we've been through to help other people and to guide other people. Come to AppDorg, you know, meet all these other fantastic campaigners and get involved, because if you don't get involved and be their voice, then who will?
Yeah, that's it. We only get one go at this, don't we? And you certainly crammed it in already, Mark. I have to say, you've got quite. There's probably going to be another book, I would have thought, after Lucy's Law. But
I think I'm going to write one about campaigning tips. Yeah. I want to share everything I've experienced, because I want other people to change stuff and make the world a better place, which sounds a bit, you know, make the world a better place, but it's true. You can do it. And instead of finger pointing and blaming and going, oh, it's your fault, actually use that time and energy to do something constructive, do an e-petition, meet your MP, and actually start being proactive and constructive and change stuff rather than being negative.
That's it. Right. Well, yes, let's unite. Let's carry on the good fight, and go and get a cup of tea now, Mark, and you've or something stronger.
And have a vegan pizza.
Oh, well, thank you so much for giving your time, and I've learned so much, actually. This has been really.
Thank you, Beverley, and thanks again, everyone watching. It's been great to spend the evening with you all.
Hopefully, we'll have a recording of this if anyone wants to watch it again, because
we love it.
Made the whole 2 hour. But thank you so much, Mark, and good luck with all you do, and stay safe.
Speak with and see you soon. And thanks again, everyone, for tuning in.
No, thanks very much. Okay, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.